We all know about Naruto. It's easily one of the most famously recognized anime out there, but not much is known about its creator, Masashi Kishimoto, who has won countless awards and was responsible for more than 250 million copies of Naruto sold worldwide, making it one of the best-selling manga series in history. But that's not even the craziest part. The whole Naruto franchise is worth more than $10 billion, and in this video, we'll take a deep dive on how Kishimoto was able to accomplish this. Kishimoto was born on November 8, 1974 in the Okayama prefecture close to Hiroshima. He was the firstborn of twin brothers and was extremely premature and almost died, but luckily he survived. During his childhood, Kishimoto showed interest in drawing characters from the anime shows that he watched, such as Dr. Slump Sorrel and Doraemon's protagonist. Kishimoto once stated that as a child, if something caught his attention, he would focus on it until someone interrupted him. Television was the most thrilling, stimulating thing he could imagine, and it would take his father to physically touch him to get his attention, because just calling his name wouldn't work. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because a lot of us are like this. It's kind of like how people are today with social media. In his final years of elementary school, Kishimoto alongside his twin brother became hooked on shonen jump manga thanks to two popular animes at the time, which were Kinnikuman and Dragon Ball. Akira Toriyama, Dragon Ball's creator, however, had a major impact on Kishimoto, and he enjoyed not only his series Dragon Ball and Dragon Slump, but also Dragon Quest, which is a series of role-playing video games, and Toriyama was the character designer. And even though he couldn't afford it, Kishimoto even managed to get his hands on Weekly Shonen Jump, where the Dragon Ball manga was published, thanks to a friend from school who had subscribed to the magazine. In middle school, Kishimoto's schedule was so packed that he almost had no time to draw. From baseball practice every weekday morning, cram school after school, and baseball games every weekend, Kishimoto was extremely busy. Kishimoto even thought for a while that he had outgrown drawing, but that all would change when a certain movie poster would catch his eye, and this movie poster would completely change the trajectory of his life. While walking home from school, Kishimoto happened to glance at a poster of Akira, created by Otomo Katsuhiro. Kishimoto was absolutely amazed at how the poster was drawn, and he actually stared at it for more than an hour. The impact Akira had on Kishimoto really isn't talked about enough. In fact, if it weren't for this poster, I honestly believe Kishimoto might not have become a mangaka, because ever since that day, the Akira poster reignited Kishimoto's passion for drawing. Once Kishimoto started his last year of junior high, he decided to apply for a high school for highly driven college-bound students, and even though he studied pretty hard, he failed. But Kishimoto applied for another school which he got into as a backup plan, just in case he failed the entrance exam for the first school. But the thing was, by that point, Kishimoto decided to stop studying completely, because he knew what he wanted to do, which was to be a manga artist. I know what many of you are thinking, so what? He just gave up on his education just like that? What if his plan doesn't work out? And I partially agree, but after seeing it from Kishimoto's perspective, his decision makes sense. Kishimoto knew about people who won Shonen Jump's Hot Step Award who were in their late teens, and even heard rumors of shoujo manga artists who were still in high school that were about to get their comics published while still in high school. Knowing this, Kishimoto bought some drawing tools and got to work to write a 31-page manga to win the Hop Step Award, even though he didn't know how to write a story. At that time, he only knew how to draw. And to make matters even worse, because he decided not to study at all in high school, Kishimoto graduated high school with him being 38th out of 39th in his class. So he graduated high school without making significant progress in both academics and manga. In high school, I was drawing manga all the time, and even though I was in the progressive track, my homeroom teacher told me I wouldn't get into any college based on my grades in the standard subjects. Most art colleges test art on their application exams, so even though Kishimoto did not take art in high school and his grades were not the best, he had faith he would get into art college. But before the exam, Kishimoto knew that even though he was constantly drawing in high school, he was painfully aware that his sketching ability was not the best, so he decided to hone his sketching abilities in art college if he got in. But in the meantime, he would practice with the sample plaster models before actually heading to the exam. Fortunately for Kishimoto, his hard work seemed to pay off as he passed his exam and went off to art college. In his first year of college, Kishimoto decided he should try creating a Chambara manga and submit it in order to win Jump's Hot Step Award. For those who don't know, Chambara manga is basically samurai manga. Unlucky for Kishimoto, that same year a lot of newcomers were thinking the same thing. In the Chambara genre, however, two individuals stood out to him: Hiroki Samura's Blade of Immortal and Nobuhiro Atsuki's Rurouni Kenshin, and compared to their work, he felt puny. Kishimoto also recalls that samurai manga was too complicated for a newcomer. Kishimoto stated that this was the biggest shock in his life after Akira. Kishimoto then submitted his work with him saying, quote, "It didn't even make a mark." In his second year of college, Kishimoto started drawing manga for magazine contests. However, he had a dilemma. He couldn't choose between the seinen manga aimed towards an adult demographic or shonen manga, which was typically read by children and teenagers. Eventually, he chose seinen because his personality was more seinen based. His art was heavily influenced by Akira, but something felt wrong. The thing that warmed his heart ever since he was young was Akira Toriyama's masterpiece Dragon Ball, so he decided to write a shonen manga. Although Kishimoto wanted to draw a shonen manga, he ran into a different problem. His art style was seinen based because initially that's what he was going for, i.e. it was no longer shonen. During this time, Kishimoto was searching high and low without success for new art that had a great sense in addition to great art, but there had been nothing since Akira that had caught his eye. That was until he discovered Hashira Melos. When watching the anime series Hashira Melos, Kishimoto was so impressed by the character designs employed by the animators that he started researching works from a variety of animators. One animator, however, had a really big influence on Kishimoto, and that was Tetsuya Nishio, who was the character designer and animation director of Ninku, which was a ninja manga. Thanks to Tetsuya Nishio's awesome way of designing the Ninku anime, Kishimoto drew inspiration and imitated Nishio-san's drawing, which was the basis for the old style of Naruto. And to put the icing on the cake, when the Naruto anime eventually came out, one of the character designers was actually Ninsho. Kishimoto's first successful manga pilot was Karakuri, which he submitted to Shueisha in 1995. After winning the Newcomer Award, Kishimoto won the award with the prize money being 200,000 yen, and was assigned a personal editor, Yahagi Kosuke. The thing though was, Kishimoto was in a state I like to call the trap of being comfortable. Because he had just won an award, he thought that becoming a manga artist would be a breeze. Yahagi, however, gave Kishimoto some advice. It's after you win an award that the hard part comes, and he was spot on. After Kishimoto won the Hopstep Award, he and his editor Yahagi worked on a number of rejected drafts, like Wandering Detour and an action manga called Asian Punk, just to name a couple. Kishimoto describes this time in his life as the most difficult.
But the story does get better. I won't say everything Kishimoto does or else we'd be here all day, but I'll try to summarize it. Kishimoto decides to go back to the basics and thoroughly restudies manga from the beginning. Kishimoto goes to the library to study the art of scriptwriting, hook techniques, how to write a story, etc. Thanks to his research, the first version of Naruto was published in the summer magazine Akamaru Jump, which was received well by fans. In December 1997, Kishimoto wanted to redevelop Karakuri for serialization, but Kishimoto was offered a one-shot in Weekly Shonen Jump, but the problem was he only had 2 weeks to complete it. This meant it had to be rushed, which led to Karakuri being cancelled. This happened in 1998. After the failure of Karakuri, Kishimoto shifted his attention in the seinen direction, hoping to find better luck with a seinen magazine, with drafts for a baseball manga called Baseball King and a mafia manga called Mario. Yahagi, however, convinced Kishimoto to give the shonen genre one last shot, and Kishimoto began working on storyboards for a fantasy one-shot called Magic Mushroom. But Yahagi was not the biggest fan of Magic Mushroom, so instead, Yahagi called and asked Kishimoto to develop storyboards for Naruto for serialization. The two decided to submit a version of Naruto with the story and world building changed and rewritten. They then produced the storyboards for the first 3 chapters, which won them a spot in the magazine. Finally, Kishimoto had done it. He had made Naruto a series. The serialized version of Naruto was released on September 21, 1999 in Weekly Shonen Jump, and it quickly became a hit. The series spanned for 15 years and it came to an end on November 10, 2014, with 72 volumes encompassing 700 chapters. Today, Naruto is one of the best-selling manga series in history, with 250 million copies in circulation worldwide. The Naruto manga series became one of Viz Media's top assets, and in 2006, 10% of all manga sales in America were Naruto. Kishimoto wasn't gifted or talented. I mean, he was always decent at drawing, don't get me wrong, but ultimately, due to hard work and resilience, trials and errors, Kishimoto created one of the greatest manga in the world.